So, for now, my next project out here is to fix this stupid pressure switch on these Ingersol Rands. They get pretty foobar. So I got a new one. It's supposed to be a heavier duty one, and it just so happened I had three MPT plugs to plug those ports, and I only need one. I'm gonna mount them like this, and I have to redo the wiring connections because these are slide-on tabs, and obviously these are not. And then I think I could get that just bent over and plugged in, get all this taped up with Teflon tape. I put new oil in this. It ran pretty hot for a while because that pressure switch broke, so I hope it didn't hurt it too bad. But if it holds pressure, then we're good.
This is a universal manifold to allow it to mount to pretty much any air compressor. So you can mount it this way, this way, this way, or this way. And by some miracle, I had the exact plugs that I needed, and I had 3 of them. I only need 1 hole. So, sweet. I found these in my spare parts. So I'm going to Teflon tape these suckers up and plug those holes. So one thing with Teflon tape is that, you want it to go with the threads such that when you tighten it in, it's just dragging on the inside and it's not hitting the end of it and pushing it off. So how can I say this? I'm gonna screw it in like this. That means I want the dragging end of it to be, that means I have to wrap it this way. So here's the dragging end of it now. See that little guy? So when I screw them in, so there's one plug. I gotta do the other 2, and then I'll mount it on the air compressor.
I'm kind of all over the place here. I've got my soldering iron heating up. Oh, what the hell is this doing? And I got this cord for the air compressor working out. I'm gonna have to solder on some of these connectors in there. Moment of truth. Let's try it. So I'm debating about rebuilding that compressor because you can see that the air filter isn't on it right now. It's because it burned off because it overheated. And there's pretty common rebuild kits for this, the Ingersol Rand SS3L3. There's gaskets and there's new reed valves and a filter, of course. Which indicates to me that when the pressure switch fails, the compressor overheating is pretty common. You can get that whole kit for $135, or you can spend $175 and get new rods and everything. I've taken this apart before. The rods are completely aluminum. There's no rod bearing at all. I don't know if the crank's aluminum or steel, but the rods have no bearing at all. They're just aluminum riding bare on the crank. It's building pressure. Let's see where it's at right now. Alright, so I'm going to let it cool down. So I'm probably going to have to get a new gasket. I just let this run for 5 or 7 more minutes and it didn't get above 110. Normally it would just be like and like pump up. If I was doing if I didn't have any leaks in the air hose and I was doing, say, impact wrench work, I could do a whole car without it cycling. And then when it did cycle, it would only go for maybe a minute. So probably overheated. And that means I got to get a new head gasket, air filter at least. Goody! There it is.
So I got some blown over stuff here that's cracked. Look at that. Yeah, that's cracked. I'll clean this off. See how we do here. Boom, boom, boom. So I've had a rough time with the air compressor. It's just look right. Can you tell how nice and, you know, apparently sealed that is versus that? See that gap? I think the head is warped. So I thought I'd try one last thing with this to make it build pressure, and I took the head back off and I put like Permatex, the silicone sealer that you use for gasket materials on engines, all around all the gaskets on both the lower part of this head and upper part, which seemed to seal a lot of it. But when I'm running this thing, it's just like, and it's not building pressure. It's a lot quieter, but it's not building pressure. So I fear that the compressor is foobar. And I already threw like $100 worth of gaskets and stuff at this thing, so not to mention the pressure switch. This is the second or third time that this pressure switch has failed. I replaced it not with an Ingersol Rand part, but with a Hubble part, hoping that the Hubble part will be better quality, and it feels like it is, so we'll see. So I think to get this thing back on the road, I'm gonna have to just get a new compressor pump, throw her on there and see if this works. But until then, this compressor appears to be dead. Poop. I'm gonna have to buy a new pump. A new pump is about $390. This whole thing, I can't remember what I bought it for. I bought it like 15 years ago. So this was, at the time I was in grad school, I had no money. And it was like a huge purchase for me. I think I bought it for like $799 or something like that. So I'm spending damn near, you know, what it's worth. The only reason I'll do that is to sell it. If I could sell it for say $400 or $500, then somebody's going to get a nice rebuilt system out of it. And then what I will buy is a lower RPM 5 horsepower unit. This is like the third or fourth time I'm rebuilding this thing. I've got a blow-up diagram that I'm looking at. I'll put all new valves in it again. I cleaned off this plate that serves as the head. For all intents and purposes, this is the head. Pretty basic, you know. It's got a passive. There's no mechanical actuation of the valves other than the air. When it's compressing, the air pushes the valves up, and they flow out of here into basically the valve cover, which is this thing, which I'll show you in a minute. And that's the air goes out. That's the valve cover. Kind of serves as the manifold, like the output manifold, sort of like the exhaust manifold at the same time. And so when the piston is pushing up, it pushes the valves up, air goes out. Then when it comes back down and it starts to go on the suction, the valves compress down like this, and they seal this up, and it pulls in air through here. So it's kind of in, out, in, out, in, out. And that's how it works. So I got this blow-up diagram. So I'm checking out this blow-up diagram, which helps me reassemble this thing. I didn't have one of these before. This time I'll make sure I do it right. And the gasket moves such that these, okay, yeah. So these two little holes here are recesses that these screws fit in, the screw heads fit in, that hold the valves in place. So far this all makes sense. So on this side I will go like this. And there. So we'll just go like a slight taper on them. Maybe taper is not the word. Like a pre-stressed bend. I think they go on that way. All right, try this again. Valve cover slash exhaust manifold all the way around. Let's see. All the heads reassembled. I don't have my air filter on here. I've got this ported into the exhaust port. Flipping on the switch here. Let's see what happens. I have to get a new compressor. So here's the deal. It would not build pressure greater than 35 psi or so. It just got there and got stuck. Better than last time. The last time I couldn't get much above 20. So something in there ain't working. Just get a new compressor. So I've spent like $120 on 2 rebuild kits for this. And a new compressor is $340 or something, or $390. The thing that sucks is this whole thing, I don't remember what I got it for. I think I got it on a sale at Northern Tool back in like 2004. It would be a shame to scrap this, so I think what I'll do is I'll replace it, and then maybe I'll sell it, and I'll just get myself a great compressor, something that's 5 horsepower and runs a lot quieter. Hopefully this is the end of my air compressor saga. Oh, that's wet. Look at that. A nice unmolested valve cover and intake manifold. So I'm going to put my MPT fitting in here for my coiled loop copper thing. I'm going to mount the flywheel. I think I'm going to keep the flywheel off the old one just in case, because I have a motor and a compressor, an old one from my father-in-law, that I'll see if I can make something out of that. But I'll mount this baby here in a little while. So one thing you got to do is you got to put oil in it. If you don't put oil in it, you're going to ruin it. It's shipped without oil. So one of the challenges with this thing is that everything is aluminum except the crankcase. So this is cast iron, I think, but that's aluminum. Actually, this might be aluminum too, because these threads stripped, and that's what you got to be careful with. Everything that's aluminum, it's going to be real soft threads. So this is a plastic housing, so it's unlikely to strip it, but you know, I'm putting that brass in there on that end and it could strip it. And that's what happened on the old one when I was trying to, I took this manifold off and on, like, I don't know, over the course that I owned it, I probably took that manifold off 6 or 7 times, and 2 or 3 of them was just in the last month trying to rebuild it, and they eventually just stripped the heads as I was trying to torque them down. So this was set really high on the pressure, and for a moment I didn't think I had any adjustability in this pressure switch, but it turns out I do, but it's super cheesy and coarse. So it's got two adjustments. You can see everything that's going on in here. Down here, this is the main wire from the motor, and this connects to the 2 bottom terminals. So that's the power for the motor. And then here is the line voltage, so that goes to the outlet. And then here, this screw, if I turn it counterclockwise, I'm decreasing the cut in and cut out pressure simultaneously. And then this one, if I turn it counterclockwise, I'm decreasing the differential between the cut in and cut out pressure. So basically this knob changes the span of which I can have a, you know, say it will pump up to 150 psi, and I start using it and the psi decreases and decreases down to say 110 psi before it kicks back on. I could twist this back clockwise to increase both
So, you know, maybe I increase the kick back on to 120 psi, but it's going to pump all the way up to like 160, which maybe I don't want. So I've been backing the both of them off, because really what I want this thing to do is kick on when it gets to about 100 psi, and I want it to kick off when it gets to about 125, 130 psi, because that's the way it was set up before. So I'm sitting here tweaking this thing. I'm like, I back this guy off, I back this guy off, and then I turn it on and I see whether or not it cycles. And I keep doing that. And right now, you know, I'm kind of precarious. I'm sitting around 140 psi, which is a little high. I don't want it to be that high. So it's a little bit of trial and error here. Alright, that's about where I want it to be. It looks like it kicks on around 100 to 110, and it kicks off around 125 to 130. And that's about right. Let's test one more. Alright. So it's not between 1 and 110, it's more like 90. Which is great. That's about where I wanted it. I wish that was a little bit more straightforward, but it seems to be working now. So I'm going to leave it. I'm not going to fiddle with it anymore. I'm going to call this project done for now. I got my air compressor back. Yay! Thanks, air compressor, for all the work you do.